Welcome to the Hauger History Podcast for a new year of school government. Hey, seniors, how you doing? It's a pretty exciting year and really glad that this is a fundamental class foundational for you before you go into the real world. You're an adult now. I don't know how much your parents talk about it or how much your society talks about it, but you will be voting soon. You will be playing a part in a very important time in American history, a pivotal time for you deciding what you do or don't want, and what you understand about government will affect how you live your life. So I hope to be very informative here and not sway you one side or the other politically. That's not what I'm here for, and I don't ascribe to either side of the political party system. Let's talk about what power, politics, and government is as far as the historical definitions, and I hope you'll learn a lot from today. All right, as you're going and keeping notes and wondering what the most important things are, these hint tickets will mark what will be on assessments. So the most important information is just about always highlighted, not all the time, but these will help guide your note-taking and to focus on what's the most important topic as we go along. Let's start. Everyone's got an A in class as we begin. You're getting a point for just being in class and being present today. And I really want us to be able to respect each other. I know you're watching a video now, but as we get into the class, we're going to have an in-class election and actually run for office. And we'll have candidates make speeches on what they're passionate about, and we'll have special interest groups. And we will try to portray how society has a lot of different perspectives and ways of looking at things and why those are all valid and very important to the people who hold those beliefs. So we want to respect that and respect where people come from and what their story is. And we'll do better because leaders sometimes don't try to take into account what other people's feelings are or what the other side might be thinking. We're going to be better than that. We're going to raise ourselves to be open-minded and thoughtful because it will make you smarter. Even if it doesn't change your mind, it'll help you understand what other people are thinking when they're interfacing with you as you grow up. And the election's about the funnest thing we get to do in the terms of what I remember from teaching government last time. It was a blast in every class period. So much fun. Hey, so journal this. Why do people get upset when they disagree or have different beliefs? Why do you think that happens? What is it about having strong opinions that make people get angry or upset or close off to other people's ideas when they disagree? That's an interesting thought. If you have a moment, jot that down in response to the journal. You can pause the video if you like, and we'll move forward. So let's back it up for a minute and talk about what is government. What do we mean when we say government? And I love audio clips, so here you go. Because I think a lot of people, when they form opinions or when they talk about government, they haven't really come fresh out of their senior year of high school and they don't have all the definitions fresh. And I think it's important to start with a few definitions. Every history teacher here at our school will be doing that. And I wanted to compare it to a family first. How do you function in a family? Do you have roles? Are some things given to you and some things you take? Are there things that are provided to you like roof, services, protection, foundation, health? And how do we function in that family? What role do you play? Are you a big brother or sister? Are you the baby? Are you an only child? And do their interactions with you as your parents or your family members change how you think of them or how you see their actions that they take? What kind of rules do you have? Why didn't you rebel? Maybe you did rebel as a kid. Why didn't you run away? Why didn't you cause anarchy? And at times, I bet you did. I bet you threw fits. I bet you ran down the street. I bet you biked away in many different respects, right? And that's all part of our story. But so is the way that we interact with our government today. Government is supposed to do these things. If you could remember 3 out of these 4 bullet points for a quiz or a test, that would be keeping you in great shape. Government's supposed to maintain social order. That means resolving conflicts. That means protecting safety. That means providing public services like building projects, sewers, roads, making laws that promote public health. Do you think that public health was important over the summer and over the springtime of this 2020 year? Absolutely it was. Absolutely we were all talking about it. And it was pretty hard to please everybody, wasn't it? Absolutely. So feel free to pause if you need to jot down these keynotes. Step 3, or the third purpose of government, is to provide national security and defense, to protect us from attacks, invaders, and threats of terrorism. And number 4, to provide control of the economic system, controlling inflation, making sure the dollar is valuable, that trade is positive, that balance sheets are productive for society, and that we are encouraging trade and regulating the development of natural resources to continue to fuel our society. And those four things sometimes come at odds of each other, right? If you, as a leader of government or as a Congress or a House of Representatives making laws, wants to solely boost the economy, well, that might come at the expense of nature or water or public goods or parks or services. Yeah, it could, right? Those things could come in the way. And the other direction could also be true. If we're so concerned with public safety and clean air to the point where we won't sacrifice a single gram of pollution, well, that's going to really hurt trade, production of a lot of different resources, and it's going to hurt industry. And that's going to result in a lot of people being laid off and needing new jobs and needing new training and unemployment going up and then benefits running short and then taxes going up. So this is all a delicate chess match balancing system, and it's something that we don't agree on. It's something that very few people can see eye to eye on 100%. And that's really important to understand that we define government first, and then we can have our opinions about it as we move on as well. Cool. I like that. Things got pretty wild during break, didn't they? These elements of government in American society are based on a lot of different philosophical thinkers and Enlightenment producers, and two of them that we're going to spotlight right now are Thomas Hobbes and John Locke. Both of these people believed in a social contract. It said that government should do its part, but the people also have to give up some power and be protected and have to follow rules in order to gain that protection. Thomas Hobbes believed that people lived in a state of nature before government existed and believed that once a social contract was created, people can't break it. You gotta follow the rules. You have to be a member of society, fall in line, and follow the basic needs of citizenship and be a decent person. John Locke thought that the contract could be broken, though, if the government failed to protect the rights of the people. And that was certainly something we saw in the spring with many different movements, even in the East Bay area, and in hundreds of cities across the United States where protests have not historically been a part of their operations. We saw a lot of people standing up for rights or speaking where they thought government was failing to protect the rights of the people. And then just alongside and across the street, you saw people counter-protesting who thought that people should be part of the social contract and fall in line and not be so upset, which in turn causes more people to get upset, which in turn causes people to get more upset. But does it have to? That's a real interesting question. Does it have to? Yep. So how much of the time do you think that you can trust the government? Because our textbook has a survey and it asks people, do you just about always trust government most of the time or only some of the time? What do you think people said? How many people in America that they surveyed said that they always trust the government? And how many people think they never trust the government? Here are the surprising results from just a few years back. Only 4% of the American public out of thousands of people surveyed said that they just about always agreed and supported what government did. 16% said most of the time. That's a combined 1 out of 5 that are really pleased. 1 out of 5 that are really pleased. 70% said only some of the time. So 7 out of 10 people surveyed said, hey, once in a while, government gets it right and can be trusted. 10% said never. I just thought that was an interesting survey. What viewpoints did many colonial Americans have about government? This is great because we're going to cover a full chapter in a short amount of time. They were so fearful, didn't even watch Hamilton over the spring or over the summer. It's on Disney Plus now, and I saw it for the first time, and I thought they did a good job of depicting a time during the American Revolutionary War and beforehand where really everyone was asking for representation, safety, security, taxes only if they're going to be represented in government. And so people were very afraid. I feel like I shouldn't say afraid like that. It was just a slip of the tongue. But colonists also had slips of the tongue, like common sense and pamphlets that were written and protests and the Boston Tea Party, where people were standing up and saying, hey, this king in England who is almost at immortal status, which the way he rules over us is not what we want. This absolute monarchy and this authority is not beneficial to our way of life, and it's not what we want to do over here in the colonies. Does that attitude still continue to be held by contemporary Americans? Did you see anyone in the spring refusing to wear masks, refusing to social distance, refusing to follow orders of state or local government? Do we still have a philosophy in some areas and in some places and in some minds in all places where we don't like being told what to do? One of my least favorite parts of teaching is the day where we go over school rules or classroom rules, because what I want to do is gain knowledge with you, have a friendly relationship with my students, be able to be seen on the same level and respect you as adults that I think you are. At the same time, if I say there's no rules, we're going to have ants. Like, just start with that level. Don't even talk about the disrespect or the escalations that can happen when there's no respect for a teacher, which you've probably been in a room like that at some point in your educational career. But if you have a place where people don't respect you, chaos can erupt. So what I want to do is give you respect all year long and get that back. But if I spent a whole hour talking about every possible rule and scenario, no gum because I have to pry the gum off the bottom of the desk, you understand that, right? But when I go to no food, well, someone's going to say, like, but I have a need to keep my blood sugar up, or that becomes a need with the state, and then that becomes something that we have a meeting about. So it's hard to have hard and fast rules. It's hard to give directives. It's hard for me to say, turn in your homework or you get a 0. And then someone says, but I lost a relative last night and I was crying all night and I couldn't do the work. Well, there should be flexibility, right? But suddenly you find loopholes, and you've come to a freedom-loving society, which we are. I love my freedom. I love the fact that in this room I could record a song about anything and no one can restrict that. And if someone told me I had to restrict that, that would be very difficult for me. Well, if someone's going to dictate the way I live my life, where I go, when I can go, suddenly it feels like I'm giving up something that people fought so hard for. This is just one example of how people's opinions can really be firmly held. I hope you're appreciating that little mental vacation there that we just went on, because it's the thought process to me that makes the government learning and the economics learning that we'll do this year really more interesting, putting it into the mindsets of people. And I think I can jump in many different facets, not all, but to try to help you see different perspectives this year. And so why do you think there's a mistrust of government? If you'd like to pause and include that in your notes, if you submit one page of full notes, you'll be getting full credit. So you can answer any of those questions. If they're interesting, pause. If not, we'll move on and get some more definitions. So governments get their authority. These are important notes. There should be a hint ticket here. From the legitimacy of the consent of the people. If every American protested, it would be clear there was no consent for government. If only 10 people in America protest, it shows that most people are consenting of government. I used to do speech and debate. I was a debate champion in 2009. If I argue 5 points of why the sky is blue, and you argue 4 of them and say that it's actually, you can refute 4 of the 5 reasons, but you never argued the 5th point, I win the argument. If I say we should raise taxes and I give 10 reasons and you only refute 8, I win because you didn't refute every point. So if you don't speak up, or if people are silent, it's assumed that you agree. Richard Nixon called it the silent majority and said that most people agree with my policies and they're living their life day by day because they don't see a need to intervene. So that's one. And secondly, in some countries, you see the ability to use coercive force, meaning you will follow my directives or I will physically stop you, or in other words, enforce power to resist and you will be stopped. So that could be in a classroom too. If I said you step 1 foot outside this classroom without permission and I'll fail you, I'd probably be outside school policies at that point. But if I did that, I'd be using force to control you. If I said that you needed to write every word in my slide down or you'll fail and you won't graduate, I'd probably, again, be removed from my position at some point. But as long as I have the authority to do that, I could force you to. Not going to. You're welcome. Oh, there's the hint ticket. Dude, I love when I put in animations for later. I even did 2 of them. That's rad. Let's continue on. We'll skip past the slide matching exercise. In 1776, Thomas Paine wrote Common Sense and distributed many, many, many copies. And so society in every state is a blessing, but government, even at its best, is a necessary evil. In its worst state, an intolerable one. And that kind of depicts how some people thought that following the king would lead them all off a cliff to failure. Here's another quote. Bad officials are elected by good citizens who don't vote. That's George Dean Nathan. I found that quote over the summer. Don't know anything about him. I will give you 1 point of extra credit if you look it up and put that in your notes. Put a couple stars around it, flag it, highlight it. Just let me see that, and I'll give you a point of extra credit. This is the kind of example where we can learn together this year and really have an exceptional time with the learning that we can do. Authority is defined as the legal right to give orders and enforce rules. Write that down if you would in your notes.
Are you like one of those English guards who can't laugh or smile or anything?
No, sir. U.S. Marine Corps, sir.
So make sure you get that definition down. The definition of government that we're going to work with is the majority of governments are categorized as democracies. This is a fact I want you to know. We'll define government in a moment. The majority of the 195 world countries in 2020 categorized as democracies. A few are still monarchies. Fewer yet are dictatorships. That's a verbatim test question with those three large words in bold white. They will be blanks for you to fill in. So most of the world's governments, even Russia, classifies itself as a democracy. There are a few monarchies left, similar to England in the original days of our country. And there are just a few who classify themselves as dictatorships. That's our 16-minute mark. So I want you to submit a page of notes. And if you want to look up anything that maybe I brought up and you wanted to learn more about, you can do that. You could also include the definitions that we talked about or the answers to any questions. You can go back and find those questions again. And that's it for week 1. We did 2 chapters. Wasn't that awesome? We did that pretty quick, and I saved you the time of reading the textbook. So submit those notes unless I have changed the assignment and send you a revised instructions, then follow that. But whatever you do, I'll make sure you get credit for the work and the time you're investing, and hopefully it saves you time for your other classes. I'm Mr. Hauger. Welcome to government class. This is going to be an awesome year. Thanks for your support, your respect, right? We talked about that. For my authority, the consent to govern. We'll see you on the next lesson. Thanks so much. Have a great day.